Hello, everyone. Welcome. Very nice to see everyone. We are going to talk about processes, systems, running a more efficient and scalable business by optimizing your process. If you are not doing this as a wedding or event planner, or even anything in anyone who owns a business, it's going to be a disaster, especially in the event industry. So we have a ton of systems in place, and we're going to talk about all kinds of stuff. I'm super excited about it. If this is your first time and you don't know who I am, my name is Annette Naif. I'm the CEO and creative director of Naif Productions. This is a turn of events where we help put a positive spin on the future of your business. We do corporate, social, nonprofit, and weddings. If you're interested, we'll help you out. Lots of years of experience. I also have a Facebook group for wedding and event planners only. It's called A Turn of Events, and no, it's not called A Turn of Events. This is A Turn of Events. It's called the Event Planner Society over on Facebook. You got to come over there and join us. We've got lots of planners over there all around the world, networking, collaborating, learning. I do a lot of education in there, and I'm going to be doing a workshop in August. So you must get in there, and I'm going to be teaching all kinds of stuff. So very excited to get it. Again, it's Event Planner Society in the Facebook group. And also if you need to do events, live, hybrid, virtual, we're here for you. Okay. So my next guest is Moustafa Moursy. Is a deeply experienced entrepreneur who empowers business owners to grow their businesses rapidly by rationalizing and mastering business processes specific to their circumstances. Moustafa leads Push and I practice this too. Push Analytics, a business consultancy firm that's in the top 10% of HubSpot agencies and is among the best in class in helping businesses grow and specifically optimizing their business processes. Moustafa has the unique distinction of having an extensive background in B2B sales and sales leadership, in addition to a very strong technical background. He excels at guiding and supporting clients as they rationalize and optimize their businesses to streamline communication, operations, processes, and growth. So excited to talk about this. I'm a systems freak. How are you? So good to have you here.
Absolutely. Good to talk to you. Yeah, everybody. Thanks for hopping on, and happy to join today.
Yeah. So if you have any questions, you guys put them in the chat. We'd love to, have them. We do have some people who wrote in, but we're gonna jam through this and have some fun about systems. So why don't you, first of all, I did do a little intro, but how did you get into this? Why don't you talk about how you started and what got
Yeah,
you to this
absolutely.
point?
So like you mentioned, I have an extensive B2B background. I mean, I had worked in B2B, like enterprise level sales. I did very complex sales in construction, and it's like there's like five different parties involved in the transactions and like dozens of people. And I did tens of millions of dollars of deals, and really later was on the sales leadership side. And
Mm-hmm.
long story short, seeing the importance of combining what's actually happening, on the transaction, on the side of actually dealing with the customers with processes is like super key. And it's very rare that people maybe had seen both sides. So I had the unique ability of being able to see it like from both sides and seeing how important that is and how much it makes a big difference in an organization.
Oh, completely. Like I said, I mean, I could not run my business if I didn't have major systems and processes in place. So, all right, well, let's talk about it. Let's get into it. What is a process? What do
Absolutely.
you think
So
what that is?
yeah, great question. A lot of times when we do these, if I was doing like a deck or like a
Yeah.
webinar or something, we have a question that we ask people: how do you feel like your business is processes are today? And there's a few answers, and one of them is we don't have processes. But it's a trick answer, because the thing is everybody has processes, because a
Yeah.
process is a series of steps to basically get you from step point A to point B. So if you're a
Right.
business and you have customers, you have a process. Now, whether you know it or not, whether you're optimizing or not, is a different story, but you have a
Right.
process. And your process might be sophisticated, it might be on spreadsheets, or it could be even on a napkin, right? Where it's just, hey, we write up stuff and this is we hand it to the customer, and that's a process, right?
That
So
makes me very nervous, but I get it.
yeah, I'm not saying that's good. I'm just saying that
Yeah, yeah.
you have one whether you acknowledge it or not. So
Right, right. Okay, good. That's great. So, what do I do if my business doesn't have a process?
yeah, so I mean, so if you've not really looked and paid attention to kind of your processes, it's not something you looked at before. I mean, I always tell people, like, when we're consulting them, we're like, look, just tell me where you are right now. And there's no like wrong answer or bad answer, but you need to understand where you are right now. So if in the example I gave, if you really are right now where you write stuff on a napkin, which by the way people do, like, you write stuff on a napkin and
Yeah.
hand it to
So many
somebody.
bad things have been done on a napkin, right?
Yeah. So, and that's your quoting process, for example. Well, then that's your quoting process today, right? I mean, now it's like you need to know where you are so you can see where you're going, and
Right,
that's the first step in that. And when people ask, well, where do I, where do I, how do I start looking at this? And we have a whole framework, but you look at it from the perspective of the customer is where you start, which is the most important part of your business. You look at it from the perspective of the customer and kind of walk through that and see what you do today.
right, right. Great. So, what's the most important process to start with? So, if you didn't have anything, where do you start?
Yeah, absolutely. So when you do that exercise of, hey, like, let's look at it from the perspective of the customer, and you're looking at kind of like, okay, look at how customers, there's going to be a lot of customers that hear about you through your different marketing channels, whatever they are, and then they hear about you, they come to your website, some of them are going to be interested, right? The first thing that's going to happen at that point is they're going to, especially like in event planning or wedding planning where you're dealing with individuals, it's not like transactional like e-commerce or something. They're going to want to then learn more or talk to you, right? So that's like the first thing where the customer really starts getting serious about interacting with you, and that's the lead management process. So you really want to make sure that your lead management process is set up properly and you have a flow, even if it's simple, right? There should be no form on your website that doesn't go somewhere, right? The worst thing you want to happen, the worst thing that you see is like somebody, they're getting leads, and everybody knows how much work goes into getting a lead. Even if you have a lot of them, it's just a lot of work to get any lead, right? They're getting
Yeah,
leads, and oh shoot, they fell between the cracks because we
yeah.
didn't notice. That's like the worst thing you want to happen.
Yeah, I mean, so that's a really good point is a lot of clients that I've received is because I jumped on it right away. I have the system, right? It notifies me. I am in social media a lot throughout the day, checking and checking I have a team of people that help me with all of my social media now. I didn't when I started, which is what most people do. They do it on their own. But now I'm lucky enough to have all that. But I still have to be in there checking. So if someone tags me on something, there's a system that I have that I immediately respond to. So, I think we have so many, and we'll get into like some of the things that we have because you're going to talk
Mhm.
about that. But yeah, so just making sure that if you have, I tried to have a form on my website. It never really worked because I still have to there's an email, contact us and we'll talk about the event. If I put a form in, there's too many questions, too many things, too many, like we have to go into the nitty gritty of an event anyway. So I just found that nobody was using it, and no, I felt like people just didn't want to. They'd rather click a button, send an email real quick, and be done with it. So
No,
some people are on
absolutely.
the fence with that.
Yeah, and that's why it's really important to always, and we talk about this a lot, of making the process work for your specific business. Maybe you found that like, hey, people like to email us a lot. Other businesses might have found like, look, we tried to putting a direct email and we just get a lot of people who just aren't qualified. Like, we do a certain segment of events only. We want to pre-qualify them on the form before we talk to them, for example, right? So depending on your business and depending on your lead volume as well. Like, once we were working with an organization and they just had too many leads relative to the sales team. And also it was, you know, not every lead was exactly qualified. Like some were still like kind of valuable, but like we didn't really want to talk to them right away because that wasn't something we were ready for. So we essentially configured out logic on the form side to basically route the leads. Like, okay, if If something is really hot, we immediately send them to the salesperson. Otherwise, they kind of go into like another flow. It's like a more like a wait list flow. So it just depends, right? It depends on the organization. It depends on like what works for the organization. That's why it's really important to think about this. Know where you are today. Know what works. And you could test different things even.
Yeah.
But the most important thing is any input into your business needs to be accounted for, and that's really really key. If there's an email somewhere, there needs to be some sort of process that thing's not going to fall between the cracks. If there's a phone number somewhere, there needs to be some sort of process somebody picks that up. If there's a request a quote somewhere, there needs to be somewhere where they get a quote, right? Any input for your business has to be accounted for, and that's the key thing to, if you're not going to do anything else, which I mean you definitely should do a lot more, but if you're not going to do anything else, you should make sure of that.
Right, exactly. So yeah, when I first started, when you first start your business, you're going to try out a whole bunch of different things, and there's a lot of project management tools, Basecamp, Trello, Asana. Those are kind of some of the tools that we're using, and I am now using Trello for a coaching program that I'm doing. Which is great. It's keeping me, we're going to launch the program in August, and it's keeping me on track of what I need to do to get to that point. I have a team that's helping me because I'm a little overwhelmed with if I look at everything, if I look at the whole chart and say, okay, I got to do all these steps, I'm going to freak out.
Right.
I got to go one by one. Right. So they're helping me stay on track with that. But I did try for my event business. I did try to do those type of, sometimes clients will have a internal, if we're doing corporate events, they'll have an internal system that they want us to use. And, we will, but for the most part, we have our own systems and that's what we follow. And it's very simple. And, we just use a Google Docs, Dropbox, and I am in Slack a little bit. I'm not a fan. Sometimes I can't find things, so I have my team send them to me in an email if I have to review something. So that's my system. Like I work emails, right? So it's just a lot easier for me. So speaking of, what kind of technology do you need to manage some of these processes? So what do you recommend?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I love that you mentioned Asana, Trello, Slack. There's a lot of tools, right? There's a lot
Yeah.
of tools. I mean, like you said, we're a HubSpot. We're a HubSpot partner. We do a lot of HubSpot. We do a lot. We're also like partnered with a lot of different solution providers, integration providers, all
What
that.
does HubSpot do?
HubSpot's a CRM, and it's a lot more than that because it's a marketing tool. It's you can run your sales there, you can run your service there. You need to set it up properly and configure it, but we can run a lot of these processes on HubSpot. But on that note, just zooming out a little,
Yeah.
what I wanted to say was, one really important thing that we do a lot is we call it a business first approach. It's like, hey, let's first find out layout. What do we need to do before we jump into the tools? 'Cause a lot of people kind of jump in and like, okay, I'm going to jump into the tool. I'm going to get these 5 tools and I'm going to jump in, or even HubSpot. I'm going to jump into HubSpot. But like, what do we even want to do? Well, we don't really know because we didn't think about it. So then you jump in and you just get really overwhelmed, right? It's just like there's so many things you can do.
Right.
But we lay it out first and like look at like, okay, where are we today? Where do we want to go? Whatever we want to go, what does that look like? We lay it out. We do a lot of like flow charting and like mapping out of like different outcomes and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Okay, we have an idea of what we want to look like and the key juncture points at which like, okay, when they request a quote, we're gonna need to send them something. When they do this, we're gonna need to send them something. Okay, now let's start looking at a tool and specific automations within those tools, that tool or tools, and implementing that. A lot of times that can be HubSpot. It could be HubSpot and a combination of other tools. Could be other tools. I mean, there's a lot of options.
There
HubSpot
is.
is a really good one for that because of the all-in-one nature, but it's not the only one by any means.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a lot. I'm just thinking of all the different apps now. And I mean, it's fantastic. And it's, Chat GPT. I've been dabbling in that a little bit. I'm writing some stuff. And when I get like blocked on something, I'm like, okay, how would I say this? Right. And it comes back with, it's pretty generic. I mean, you have to sometimes really dig in, and I'm still not, I'm still
Yep.
learning it, but man, oh man, I gotta say is it's amazing. I mean, it can write blogs like that. So there's no reason why nobody should be writing blogs right now. But anyway, so pretty good. So, all right. Is that all is that what you want to say about the technology side of it? I'm just, we're
Yeah. I mean,
okay.
it's really it's really a matter of like, hey, like understanding like your needs. I mean, if you want to talk specific tools, I mean, like Trello is very good for, like boards. So is Asana. They're very similar.
Right,
Slack for communications, right?
right,
Again, HubSpot is like more all in one. Sometimes you might integrate some of these tools together. So maybe you want to do something, get your sales process in HubSpot and your service, but then you want to do project management in like Monday or Trello. So you might do integrate like that.
right.
Uh, so again, the my advice is always to zoom out, look at what you want to do
What you need, yeah.
before you decide to, and then map that out, and then let overlay that on the tools.
Right, right. There's lots of stuff out there. I just signed up for Kajabi. I jumped in. I'm going into Kajabi's to manage all of my online course. So I'm excited about it, but it's definitely a commitment. All right.
For
So
sure.
how does value creating innovation happen when talent is freed up by business process improvement?
Yeah. So process, I like to think of process as it's one of the things in your business that you can actually use to deliver essentially guaranteed ROI, right? Because what's happening is like if you're like, let's say like let's say marketing, for example. Marketing is like, okay, you got to spend all this money on like an ad campaign, Google ads, whatever. And then you got to do this, and then you might not get people that come to your website or click or book a meeting or whatever. So it's you have to put a lot of work into it, and you might or might not get what you want. Now with process though, it's different, right? You already have people coming to you, and you're saying, I'm going to manage this better, right? And I'm going to
Right,
make sure I get more value out of them, less things falling between the cracks. But I'm also going to make sure that I manage the people I do manage more efficiently, which in turn means you have more time to be able to manage more accounts. Like, right, if you're doing events and you improved your process where now you can do, whatever used to take you 10 hours now takes you 8 hours. Well, that's 20% more events that you could do without having to do anything, without having to change anything,
right,
right? You don't need to add people, you don't need to do anything, 20. And if you do add people, then they can do even much more
right,
than that, right? So having a good process helps you on a lot of different aspects value wise. So it really cuts the time that it takes to service customers, right? It cuts the chance of like there being like things that fall in between the cracks.
yeah,
It increases like the responsiveness to customers. So it works both ways. Like they feel better because they got their answers or whatever quicker because you're more efficient and you were able to do it faster and you're able to like plan your events faster. You're able to like plan out your weddings faster. So they're happier, but you're also happier. So everybody's happier
everybody's
and
happy.
everybody's happier, right? So it's really like a guaranteed ROI. And if you are I mean, if you're a business with any level of, like regular input, you should really be looking at process. It's not one of those things where I'm going to wait till I'm X size. It's more like, hey, I have people coming in
Right
now.
from the
Let's make sure.
beginning.
Yep, absolutely.
That's the first thing I teach. So when I coach wedding event planners, we go through everything, and the foundation is the first piece we talk about, and getting their systems in place. And so the biggest tip that's helped me when I first started was we use Google Docs for pretty much everything, in Dropbox, like I mentioned, but Google Docs is where we keep a workbook, and in that workbook, which has all the different tabs on it, is the timeline, the budget, the speakers, sponsors, all that stuff, vendors. And then we have a general information tab that pulls anything we need to know about the event, that we don't have to go to an email and start searching for it, or print out a bunch of emails with all this information, like where's parking going to be, and how do they, what's, just all the different tips about the venue and vendors and things like that. So it's all in one place, and we attach the team to it and the client's team. So everyone is in the same document in real time, and it's all right there. So if the client just says, okay, where do we stand with the speakers right now, they can go into that document and then they can see it. And that also cuts back on communicating with us constantly, right? So if we tell them, check out this document, work in the workbook, put everything in here, so that it kind of cuts down on the hours of questions that I might get or emails we might get. So it keeps us organized, and we're not wasting time trying to find things all over our million emails that we get for every event. So one little tip
Absolutely.
for all you wedding and event planners out there, or anybody who's doing like a project management type of thing. So what does
No,
the
and on that,
yeah,
yeah, yeah, just comment on that. So,
yes, sure.
one thing about a good process, you always want to be tweaking it and adding to, your repository of things. So,
Right.
when you kind of lay out your process, like that's a good example, right? So, process of servicing customers or interacting. So maybe you decide on a medium where it's like, okay, we're gonna have some sort of knowledge base, and it's gonna be in Google Docs, or it's gonna be in HubSpot, or it's gonna be on a website. But then now you have that, but you could actually, as you're going along, you don't have something in the knowledge base. Customer asks you a question. You're like, I needed to research this. Okay, we're gonna add this to the knowledge base, and then you're gonna keep expanding it so it scales with you. So that's a great thing to think about.
Wait, say
Templating
that
is
piece again.
so you decide on the process where we're going to have a knowledge base and we're going to do it on Google Docs, for example.
Hmm.
So that's good, and you have your initial burst of content, but it's an ongoing thing. So as you're going through your work life, then
Right.
you come in, it's like, oh wait, this guy asked a question and we didn't have an answer in the knowledge base, but this was a pretty elaborate answer. So you know what, we're going to come up with this, and then we're going to actually repurpose it and put it on the knowledge base, so now the next time somebody asks that question, we already have it answered, and you keep expanding and growing it from there, right? So,
Right.
and templating is a big part of this. When
Yeah.
you do something, try to template it and
Oh, yeah.
bring it back into whatever system you already decided to
I
use.
have a million templates.
Awesome, awesome.
Templates for everything.
I
I have
love
a
it.
template for templates. And they're key because if I have to when I put a proposal together, I don't want to have to recreate the whole darn thing. So I just pull out a nonprofit or a corporate or a wedding, and boom, it's all right there, and then I can put the contracts together, the same thing. So it's really, really, I mean, and when you get used to the systems, it's quite easy. So, and I'm always open to when my team comes on, and if I get somebody new in and they've got a great idea, I'm always open to that. So I suggest that as a business owner, you keep open minded to anybody that has a different system that might work for them as well. It could work. So I just want to make sure everybody is working efficiently and happy at what they're doing. So how does value creating innovation happen when talent is freed up by business process improvement? Did I ask you that already? I think I just asked you that, didn't I? Okay. What does business process improvement mean to your business in 2023?
Yeah, so I mean, business process really means, a lot of things, and it depends on that business, right? But the core aspects of it that you want to have in a process are, there's a few things, right? So you want to make sure that your process, accounts for the customer journey. So it's like customer first type process, but it also merges the needs of the business on the back end. So good process combines between, here's what the customer's perspective is, and we want to smoothen that out as much as possible. But on the back end, here's the things we need to kind of make that happen. So we kind of need to like marry the two,
Right.
no pun intended, and kind of bring that together. So you want to account for that. You also want to, obviously account for the technology you're using, like we talked about. There's a lot of platforms out in 2023. There's a lot of different things. You might need multiple platforms in your business. You might be, part of your process might be using certain tools, but then you're plugging some things into like another tool or into like Chat GPT to do something and bring it back. So you're going to be using multiple platforms. So you want to account for the technology you're using and understand like what technology fits what role.
Right.
A lot of times if you have different platforms and there's overlap, you need to really like kind of like, okay, we're using HubSpot for this and we're using MailChimp for this, or
Yeah.
whatever, right? If you're using both. And then you want to be able to make sure that your process accounts for like your key KPIs, and then you have a way of tracking that, right? So, and that's what one of the things I love about like having a CRM like HubSpot is it's very easy to like kind of lay out a lot of the information you want to track on fields and stuff on like potential prospects or companies or whatever, and then like start tracking like, okay, how are we doing? Hey, we tried, we wanted to do like, I don't know, 20 events this season, and we fell short of our goal, and we're at 18. Well, what did we do? Well, we did pretty good with weddings, but we're a little bit low on corporate events, right? So okay, we need to increase our corporate outreach. So let's look at that, and then you kind of dive in more. Oh, we actually did a lot less outreach on corporate this quarter, so it does kind of make sense. So let's bump up the outreach, right? So you want to be able to have defined KPIs of what you want to look at and have a way of tracking it in your system, so that you can look at the business, and be able to basically pull levers
Right.
to make changes. Sorry.
Right. 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 And it's not always good just to keep it in your head. It's good to get it out. I mean, I
No.
think of things all the time of what I want to do, and then you know I'm lucky that I can just like text one of my teammates and say, hey, let's start doing this or let's start doing that. So that's good. And one of the things I want to mention is for all my wedding and event planners listening out there is when you have your system, your process in place, you need to teach your client what your system is, right? So you have to teach them how to work with you. I made that mistake when I was early on in my business, and I would allow corporate to come in. Sometimes they have their systems and you got to follow them, which is fine. But I allowed a client to try to tell me what to do and how to run my business. And she wanted to do it her way and blah, blah, blah. And it didn't work. It didn't work for us, but I was so young and green and didn't want to say no to anything. Now I'm very clear on this is our system. This is what we do. You hired us for a reason. And if you just sound like you're in charge, then they listen. And I found that just Google Docs was easier for our clients because everybody pretty much knows it. And if I tried to bring in another like Basecamp or something for us, they got all confused, and then it was us training them, and it was a whole big thing. So just make sure that when you have your systems and processes in place, that you teach the client how to work with you, because a lot of times they don't know how to work with planners. And so that's an important thing. And that's a really important question to ask if they've ever worked with a planner before. That's a
Uh,
red flag. You're going to be having to charge more money because they're going to suck more hours out of you. So keep that in mind.
no,
You know?
absolutely. That's really key. And one thing I want to say there is it's really when you come in and look as a planner, you're essentially, I mean, you're planning and executing, but you're also kind of a consultant, right? So people look to consultants like we
Yeah.
want you to know what you're talking about, like, right? So when you come in and you're like, look, we use this. This is our system. Like, right, we use this is our onboarding form. This is our playbook. This is where our knowledge base is. This is what we use. People respect that, right? They respect that. Like, okay, like I hired the right planner, right? She knows what she's talking about. He knows what he's talking about.
Yeah.
We're good. And they respect that. So they are looking, especially in like consultative type roles, that and you have a plan, obviously,
Right.
like, right, but not just on the things that you're planning, but also you have a way of getting to
Right.
that plan. Like we
So,
had
right.
yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying like we've had people kind of comment like, "Hey, they just like sometimes the process." Like sometimes people would just
I
comment
know.
and be like,
I was
you
just going to say the same thing. I've had just yesterday, I had to present a proposal, and it starts from the proposal, right? I mean, your initial call, and you sound like you know what you're doing, but confidence is everything. Um, and we present our proposal, and they're like, "Oh my gosh, this is so great!" And from the like every time present my proposals now, because I'm closing, a majority of them now than when I was younger, in my younger days of having my business. And it just feels so good. And they are just very impressed by the process already. And in my proposal, while I'm presenting the proposal to them, I always tell them, we're going to create a Google. I tell them exactly what we're going to do and what's the next steps to work with us. So they're clear, right? They're not wondering like what to do, what's going to happen next in their process, right?
absolutely. And that's a really key point actually. A lot of times when we're talking about process, um, there's a very important juncture point. So if you ask, you'd ask like what's the most important thing, or not the thing to start with, and we said lead management. But there's
Right.
after that there's like a really key point that you want to look out for, which is the transition between the sale and the execution or the onboarding, right? So when you and this is a big issue with a lot of business, a lot of friction there, and especially if you sometimes maybe have different teams, different people working on it, there's not as much communication, things fall between the cracks, it's like inefficient. That's like a very important point to optimize, and you kind of touched on that, where it's like kind of at the end, like, hey, this is what we're going to do, this is how we're going to onboard.
Yeah.
Having like an initial call, whatever you want to call it, onboarding, whatever, is like super important.
Right.
And even if it takes you a little bit more time because you're setting the expectation in that call or whatever, maybe you didn't want to do an initial call, you want to just do a call later when you had some deadlines, but that time is so worth it ROI wise. Like we've actually been involved in businesses where it's like, we were trying to cut down like resources on a certain, like on the onboarding side, and we'd look at like, okay, let's cut the onboarding call, but then we look at it and we're like, but there's way too much value extracted out of the onboarding call that we can't. Even it might feel like, oh, you're just talking about like ground rules and like how to work together and like maybe like high level stuff, but it
Yeah.
just helps so much setting the expectations. people are more relaxed and they're not confused. They're not like, oh, I haven't heard from Annette in like 8 days or something. And it's like, I don't know, does she even, but it's like, but you might have explained, well, look, I mean, we have our initial info. We're putting a plan, like a preliminary plan together, and we're going to come back to you in 10 days. So, okay. I mean, yeah, I'm fine. Like,
Yeah,
right.
and those are the things you have to ask when you have the initial call I always explain to them, all right, let me, I gotta, it depends on what's going on at the time, right?
Mhm.
If I have an event coming up or I'm deadlined in the next week or something, I will let them know, all right, I'll get back to you Monday, if whatever the day it was, I'll get back Monday, and then we'll set a time. We'll get on the call together and I'll go through the proposal with you. They always want to say, oh, can you just send the proposal? And I don't do that. I want to get on the call,
Yep.
get another sales in there, right? Try to sell them again, or just let them know, describe what I'm doing with them, for them. But I think that's a crucial part. If you don't get them back on the phone and you just send the proposal, you're missing out so much, because there's conversation that can happen and they can fall in love with you more, right? So it's like getting them on and getting them excited. And I get them excited about wanting to work with us through explaining what we're going to do. And that's really what the key is. So, and then I tell them, we next steps are we're going to get the contract signed and you're going to send an initial payment, and as soon as we get that, we're going to start looking for a venue. And they know that we don't start anything until we get the deposit and the contract is signed. So you just got to kind of keep them going. And we follow up is everything. They're never going to not hear from us for
That's
8
right.
days. It's unless I'm gone somewhere or something, but it's never going to happen. But yes, it's very, very key. So that's great. All right. So what's the difference? What's the difference between business process improvement, which is BPI, and mere business process automation, BPA?
Yeah, so I mean, this goes back to kind of what we were talking about, like different people call it different things, right? But there's two
Yeah.
aspects to the business process side. The first one is actually building out the process and tweaking that, and that's why I was saying we like to look at a business first approach. Like, hey, what do we need as a business? Where we are today, and where are we trying to go? And we lay that out, kind of like holistically, and like map it out, flow chart out, and see what's happening. And then we look at what automations and what tools can we use, or if we're already using tools, like, okay, what automations can we use to improve that? So let's say we're like, you mentioned follow up. Follow up's a great example. Let's say we're like, okay, we know that we really need to follow up. These people just forget, or they whatever. I mean, like, follow up is just so important. Like, they forget. We send them,
It's everything.
yeah, we send them a question, they forget to answer. We ask them like, hey, do you prefer this kind of wedding hall, this kind of wedding hall? They don't answer. We need a follow-up process in place, right? So we decide like key points at which we want follow-up. We kind of laid it out. Okay, we need follow-up when we ask them the initial questions after we bring them on. We need follow-up when we get them the initial 2 3 quotes on a venue. Okay, we need follow-up at these places. So then we're like, okay, how are we going to automate this? So then we look at and be like, okay, in whatever tool, like let's say in HubSpot, we're going to build a workflow, and we send this type of email. If we don't get a response, then we're gonna do something where we get like a task assigned to like a sales rep, or a rep, or whoever, and they go ahead and call them to like follow up more, right? So first we need to understand what we want to do, map that out, and then we need
Mhm.
to automate it.
Yeah, yeah. We have it's really hard in the event industry because, when you're doing events, you're at a different stage for every event. And sometimes things don't happen always in the same order, but we do have a list that we've created, that, like, once the client's signed, and then you do get that, you got to send an invoice, you got to send the contract, you got to make a folder, whatever, right? So put all the folders together in Dropbox. There's a whole process there. So, and for the most part, everybody kind of does it because it's second nature now, because we've been doing it for so long. But we did create something like that for people who onboard, who are new with the company and don't know what our process is. So pretty easy though. I think I've never really had anybody, feel overwhelmed or anything, which
That's
is
really good.
yeah. So what's one thing, we're coming to the end here. I could talk about this for days. I love systems, as you can tell. So what are things you can do right now, that will lead to immediate ROI, and how will these changes lead to self-funded innovation and long-term growth?
Yeah, absolutely. So just taking a look, like I mentioned earlier, process is like, as guaranteed to ROI as you're gonna get, because you're taking something that already exists, that you have control over, uh, and you're making it better, and you can do more, with the same amount of resources and make the customers happier, and then be able to take on more. And also, people, when they're happier with you, they're more likely to come back or upsell or refer as well.
Right.
So really taking a look at the business and seeing, hey, if anybody wants homework from today, like take a look at where your business is today. Sit down and be like, hey, what are my processes look like today? Am I doing the napkin? Am I doing the spreadsheet? Again, there's no wrong answer. Don't beat yourself up, whatever the answer is. Maybe
Yeah.
you feel really good about them, whatever the case may be. And then it's like, where can we drive some improvement? And key points to look out for are really any places where people are coming into your um, inputting into your business, like lead management, the sales process itself, which we didn't really talk about, but that's like another big one. And then the transition from when the sale happens to the execution, so the onboarding piece, really key, and then the servicing. So you can look at the different aspects and then
Yeah.
see, oh, actually, like, yeah, people fall in between the cracks here. We really struggle with this. We struggle with this, and start driving improvement from there.
Yeah. When I first started, I sat down and I said, okay, these are all the tasks I need to do that I'm struggling with, that I need help with, and things I don't like to do. Like listen, I can't be an expert in everything in my business. And when you run a business, you kind of have to be. I want to learn how to do stuff, but I want to hand it off. And I'm great. I love to delegate. So that's kind of one of my favorite things to do. So, just when I sat down and said, okay, I'm really struggling in this area and I need someone to help me with this, or a system that's going to help me with this. If you sit down and write the things that you don't like to do or that you need help with, that might help too. Right. So,
No, absolutely, absolutely, and yeah, definitely feel free to reach out to
yeah.
help. For
Yeah.
help.
Where can we find you?
Yeah, yeah. So for people who are listening to this podcast, we're gonna do essentially special. If you wanna jump on a 15-minute consult to talk about specifically your business, we're happy to do that. So just message us at hello@pushanalytics.com
Okay.
and put in the title that you came from the podcast. So that way we know that, like, we can get you scheduled. Like, the team will pick it up and get you scheduled on a call
Yeah.
where we can talk one-on-one about your business.
Great. Christy's going to put that information tell us what that email is again. Hello.
Hello@pushanalytics.com.
Awesome. Awesome. So Christy will put that in the chat. Thank you so much. Love this great information. So fun talking to you. I really appreciate your time.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, you guys, thank you so much. Have a fantastic weekend, and we'll see you next week. Talk to you later.